In the Boundary Country along the U.S.-Canadian border in the 1880s, prospectors located many significant deposits of valuable minerals. In the Phoenix area, they discovered and staked a large body of low-quality copper. Corporations were quickly formed to exploit this body of ore. Granby, later Granby Consolidated Mining and Smelting Company, was the largest of these. It operated the Victoria, Old Ironsides, and Nob Hill mine. The Dominion Copper Company operated the Stemwinder, Idaho, Brooklyn, and Rawhide mine, and Consolidated Mining and Smelting Company, later Cominco, operated the Snowshoe mine. Let's start our historic walk on the west side of town where the Greenwood Road met Dominion Street, the main street of the lower town. This part of town was built around the Brooklyn and Idaho mines. The first structure we saw would be the huge wooden trestle, the Great Northern Y. The Great Northern snaked up from the United States through Midway on the charter of the Victoria, Vancouver, and Eastern Railroad in 1904, 4 years later than the Cascade and Western, or CPR. Tucked west of the Y is the Phoenix Brewery, run by the Byner family. They produced Phoenix brand beer and were quite successful and well thought of in the region. Phoenix was not totally a company town. Granby Consolidated had sold lots to raise money for the smelter in Grand Forks. One of the industries in the town was providing lodging for the miners. There were some 20 hotels in the town, and a number of them were on Dominion Street. Problem: we have the maps of the structures, photos of the structures, about the size of your fingernail, and a list of names, Alexander Hotel, Mint Hotel, etc., but little information to map the names to the structures. This then is the Norden Hotel, owned by Alban Armstrong and Thomas Burr. Down the street, the Butte Hotel, owned by Angelo Luciani and George Vickery. The Butte was known as a sink of iniquity. The small building between the two hotels was the photo studio of Alice Libby. Her husband worked in the mine. The Brooklyn Hotel had a much better reputation, owned by James and Effie Marshall. Regional historian Bill Barley says the restaurant was second to none. Across the street from the hotel is the Morin Thompson General Store in its first location. A continuing problem on Dominion Street was caused by the Brooklyn mine. In October 1906, an explosion set off in the Stope area, blew up into the middle of Dominion Avenue. To fill this hole in, apparently they used a couple of hundred tons of Idaho mine dump rubble. Almost a year later, the city council sent a stern letter to the mine owners, reminding them they still had sidewalks and steps to replace. As we head to the foot of Phoenix Street, we find the Great Northern facilities. Here we see the station, and back of it, the water tank and the locomotive engine house. As well as hauling ore to the Grand Forks smelter, the Great Northern offered a direct route for passengers and freight to Spokane, Washington, the center for mining activity in this area. We return to Dominion Avenue as it rises to meet Victoria Avenue in the upper town. The building with 2 bay windows was the home of the Phoenix Pioneer newspaper in its final years. The paper published until 1916. Its last edition seems to blame local politics for its failure at that time. Up the street, on the left, a new city hall and fire station was constructed. Behind it is the new rink, built by public subscription. Phoenix had a first-class hockey team. The town enjoyed winter recreation, curling, skating, skiing, and 17 saloons operating around the clock. At the first bridge, we are looking north up School Street. The small building on our left is the post office. Up the hill, the Miners' Hall and Opera House. And on the right, the two-story school that replaced its log predecessor. Photos show a good number of log houses remained in use in the town until it was abandoned. At the second bridge, we reach Church Street. The dark building to the right is the Presbyterian Church on Etna Avenue. Beside it is the first office and printing plant of the Pioneer newspaper. Up the hill, on Nob Hill Avenue, is the Palace Livery, and across the street a small Methodist church. Looking at the foundations of buildings, we realize putting them on the level was no easy chore. Just before First Street was a bakery and the P. Burns Company. Pat Burns was the Calgary meat baron who dominated the retail industry in Pioneer West. We look up the street to the business district on Nob Hill Avenue. The bridge, the stairs, and the sidewalks required to navigate the town. On the left are the company-built houses rented to mining families. On the right, private houses and Daniel Dean's Hotel. At this corner, the big change came in 1911, when a new school was built. At the end of Victoria was the General Hospital. Again, the company provided doctors and nursing staff. The cemetery records bear witness to the mine accidents, rampant communicable diseases, and post-World War flu pandemic which the nurses battled. South on 2nd Street was a residential section. It was also known as Holy Hill for the churches here. Our Lady of Good Counsel, Roman Catholic Church, and up the hill on the right, St. John's Anglican, and on the left, a new Methodist church. Often established Eastern congregations would send seed money to wild western mining camps. Turned around and looking north. We'll just take a little detour up to the east end of Nob Hill Avenue to have a look at the CPR station and the Golden Hotel. Again, the City Council authorized a wooden sidewalk to be built from 2nd Street to the Canadian Pacific Station. As we move up 2nd Street, to the left is the Central Hotel. West on Old Ironsides Avenue, we can see 4 or perhaps 5 hotels, plus the blue-roofed Old Ironside boarding house. On the left, along Granby Place, there are additional cottages built for the company employees. This 3-story building is the Granby Hotel. It was considered the finest mine boarding house in the province. The fire which wiped out part of the city on the afternoon of Friday, August 12th, was the most disastrous fire that has ever visited Phoenix. The fire started at 4 p.m. in the oil house of the mouth of number 3 tunnel of the Granby mine. Fanned by the draft from the tunnel, the blaze shot down the long tram shed to the number 3 crusher and the ore bins with lightning rapidity, spreading at the same time to the Granby machine shops, the power generator station, the company officials' cottage, and the superintendent's residence. These buildings were all a mass of flames in a very few minutes. The occupants of the houses having barely time to escape, while a brisk breeze carried the flames and sparks to buildings on the lower streets, the school, Methodist Church, Palace Livery, Stable, Presbyterian Church, and Pioneer printing office apparently taking fire simultaneously. All buildings being framed, they were eaten up like matchwood by the fire, and the heat was terrific. When the fire was burning fiercest near the crusher, a compressed air pipe burst and acted as a bellows to the fiery furnace, forcing large burning embers great distances and starting fires in various parts of the city as far as the Catholic Church. But the credit for saving the city was widespread. Hundreds of firefighters worked heroically. The strenuous fights of the fire department were in saving the old Ironside Hotel and Black's Jewelry Store, while an equally brilliant fight accounts for the Miners' Union Hall, escaping with a slight scorching. One thing favorable to preventing the spread of the fire was the fact that one shift of miners was just going to work and another shift coming off at the time, and a force of a couple of 100 men was on the scene in but a few seconds from the time the fire was first discovered. Here we are looking north on First Street to Old Ironside Avenue. The building on the left was the only brick commercial building in Phoenix. The big store split the frontage with the bank. On the First Street side were a set of offices used by doctors, lawyers, and agents. Up the hill, on the left, the Nob Hill Hotel. On the corner, right, the general offices and store of the Granby Company. Back on Nob Hill Avenue, this block was the major commercial district of the Upper Town. On the far west was E.A. Black's Jewelry Store. 3 doors down was the Book and Stationery. Beside it, the yellow-fronted drugstore. The McHale Building came next. It held billiard rooms and a bowling alley, while the Masonic Lodge met upstairs. On the corner stood the Summit Hotel. Between McHale and the Summit were 3 small stores, at this time showing a jewelry store and a barber shop. Behind the Summit Hotel was the Queen's Hotel, and across the street, the Balmoral, later King's Hotel. In 1912, Charles Hunter of Hunter Kendrick moved to Vancouver, and the big store passed to Morin Thompson Company. In the same year, the Eastern Townships Bank merged into the Bank of Commerce. Around the same time, Phoenicians became familiar with a new name, Antioch, a place at the other end of the province, near Alaska, that also sat on a huge mountain of low-quality copper. As the decade progressed, it was finally announced that Granby Consolidated was closing the Phoenix mines. By the fall of 1919, the town and the mines had been abandoned. Phoenix was shutting down. One by one, family by family, residents left the town for continued opportunities in the new province. The Biner family packed up their brewing equipment and traveled to Mexico. Sun, wind, rain, snow, the forces of nature, as well as man, weathered the town. The abandoned town became a curiosity in the neighborhood. The Methodist Church tumbled. Our Lady of Good Counsel counseled no more. The brick store and the bank is seen through the skeleton of the new school. Going, gone. Picked over, plundered, or perhaps just vandalized. Carefully constructed bridges, sidewalks, stairs collapsed, becoming dangerous to the tourists. The old stores held only broken windows and perhaps broken dreams. Scraps scattered across the hillside. But then, In 1955, Granby Consolidated repurchased the Phoenix mining property. In 1959, they began mining the area again, but the mining camp was no longer required. The company brought the equipment and concentrator from Copper Mountain, south of Princeton. It was likely at this time the remaining structures of Phoenix were destroyed. The area was surface mined until 1972, then left as it remains today, the typical ledges of a stripped mine pit. The pit, the cemetery, and the ski hill are all that remain to mark Phoenix. Bill Barlee says the minerals taken from Phoenix surpass those of the Klondike. According to the BC Mining Department statistics and using current 2024 prices in Canadian dollars, over $2 billion of copper was taken from the Phoenix mines and another $2 billion of gold.